Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh,
Hello.
there's more than us
There is.
in the room.
We got some more people around the table.
We've got some
Woohoo!
guests.
Yes.
This is a
Hello.
first for
Hello.
us.
It is.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Very exciting. And we did speak about this a few podcasts ago, did we not?
We
about
did.
saying we'd like to have. And we're very excited that this is happening. We have got the lovely Karen and Richard around the table. Hello, our lovely friends.
Hello.
Good evening.
This is very weird.
It is. It is. So-
It's great. It's great to be with you.
And we're just incredibly sorry that the numbers will drop as a result of this. So,
Stop
Oh,
now.
stop it.
so-
I don't believe it. Do you know what? I'm actually thinking that we'll probably get more of the lovely young people and youth possibly listening for the first time because
Yeah.
tell us why. Why do we think we'll have more of the youth listening? What is your role? What do you do?
Well, that's a really good question. Our role, we have the privilege of heading up the youth ministry at the Wells Church.
Yeah.
I'm Karen, by the way, and then
I'm Richard. So, yeah, we
we are married
are married.
to each other.
Good.
Yeah,
Just glad we cleared
putting
that
that
up.
out there.
And we're still married to each other even after just over a year or so of doing youth, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, hanging on.
So-
Good. That's good. I'm glad to hear it.
and loving it. As Karen said, it's probably one of the biggest privileges that I think we've got. You know, it's an amazing thing that we've been involved in. So yeah, we'd love to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And we're excited about that to hear
Yeah.
for sure.
And how long have you been married?
Stuart, don't ask
That
that question.
wasn't on the list.
That wasn't on the
list of
question.
any
you said.
questions.
hilarious.
It's
Roughly.
22 years this
Okay.
year.
It is, yeah.
Come
That's helpful
on.
because if
Yeah.
people are listening and don't know you, they'll know that you're at least 22 now, plus 16.
Yeah, plus a few. We
Yes.
got married very young,
Yeah, you did.
obviously.
Children.
No,
Yeah,
we didn't.
no,
we
I mean,
didn't.
but-
It's a lie.
But that's helpful because the conversation we're going to have about youth sometimes comes with all sorts of presuppositions. And so I think it's
Yeah.
just helpful to know.
Yeah. Well, to give
who
it
you
some
guys are.
context, we have a 28-year-old son, so
Okay.
that gives you an idea of how young we're not. But yeah, so
Yeah, and I think there's something just, I mean, from me personally, I may not physically be young, but mentally I definitely am. So, and I'm sure Karen will definitely go with that. I don't think I've gone anywhere near my teenage years just yet. So I think that kind of helps a little bit, really.
There's different ways of interpreting that, aren't there? It's either youthful or, yeah, we'll leave it at youthful.
Yeah,
We'll go for
let's-
youthful,
yeah.
yeah, definitely.
That's
Great.
a kinder thing to go for.
Brilliant.
So tell us, how long have you been at the Wells Church?
I think we joined around February, March 2023.
Yep.
Yeah. So
2 and a bit years.
2 and a bit years.
Mm.
Yeah.
So Karen had been stalking online for a few months
Watching
before.
on-
Yeah,
online,
because
yeah.
you guys were watching during some of the COVID
We were?
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
and that was weird for everybody. But us, lots of churches switched to doing online
Yeah.
services as well as in person, and or initially just online, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that gave you the opportunity to see what was going on.
Yeah, it did, and we were at another church, and I felt that we were being prompted to look for somewhere different and somewhere bigger, just for our own real development. We didn't really know what we were stepping into at that stage, but the benefit of being able to watch online was that actually when we walked in the room for the first time, we felt like we knew you all.
Yes.
Whereas
Yeah.
you were like, who are these people we've never met before?
I
we
remember
felt like,
that,
yeah,
actually.
we felt like
Yeah.
we'd already become part of
Yeah.
the church, actually.
That's amazing.
And I think you sometimes forget that just because you're watching online, actually, you still feel included and part of the church, even if you don't step in the building. And that's a testament to, I think, our church, that regardless of whether you're in the room or online, you're still feeling welcomed and part of something, really special. So, yeah, that's how we came to be here.
That's wonderful. So that's amazing, really, that you've been we were saying you've been leading youth for a year, and it's 2 and a bit years that you've been here. So nearly 50% of your time here has been leading youth, which is amazing.
That's true, yeah.
And I'm assuming, was that something that you felt God lay on your heart? Is it youth been something that you guys have always had on your hearts, or is this something that's happened when you came here? How did it come about?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because Karen and I were talking about this earlier, and we were kind of, sort of saying to each other, like, how did we get to the point where we were leading youth? And so for me, I would say that it was never a thought that I would have anything to do with the youth. It just didn't ever feel like it was something that was applicable for me personally. I always felt it was a Karen thing. So, as she said, at our old church, so Karen was involved in the youth there, has, I think, a really amazing gift for just communicating with them, and I kind of guess I thought it was kind of her thing, really. So I never felt it was anything for me. I think the church, or the Wells Church, were really gracious in allowing us to settle into the church. So certainly where we were before, it was very much a case, Karen was on youth pretty much most weeks. I was doing the tech, I was doing the words, I was doing whatever else. We were on welcome team, and almost every week we were serving in some capacity. And actually when we joined here, actually you guys were so amazing about just letting us find a space, and you didn't put us under a lot of pressure to start with.
That's great.
And that's what we needed. We needed to really connect.
Yeah.
We needed to hear Jesus's voice with what he wanted for us. And then we were chatting earlier today about just like, we don't know when suddenly it prompted. I suspect what probably happened is Karen told me that I needed to do it.
I actually think that's how it went.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair. Yeah. I think initially, I think Richard's right. It always felt that youth was my thing, and it had been something that I'd held quite lightly, I guess, for, decades. And I'd always felt very cool to do something with young people, and I hadn't really known what that looked like, and I was kind of like, it got to the age where I was thinking, okay, God, you're clearly given up on me now because I'm way too old to do anything different. And then this came up, but it came, it was a very, when we got to the point of we were leading youth, it became very obvious very quickly that actually this was a role for Richard. And I think that's something when God has given you something for such a long time, you think, it's all mine, it's my role, this is mine. And I think I learned from this would actually, just hold things really lightly, because God is maybe leading you into something, but it may not be yours.
Yeah.
He may be leading you to pass that on to somebody else, or it may be somebody else's role. So there was a big lesson in that for me, but it was very evident from when we started actually physically leading those youth sessions that it was Richard's role to lead those sessions, and the way that they responded to him was phenomenal, in a way that they respond differently to each of us, because we each have different we have different skills, and we have different giftings within that, but to Richard's surprise and to mine, it was definitely a real gifting that he had, and it actually really transformed him as a person, I have to say.
That's interesting to
Yeah.
hear. I'd love to hear more about that. One of the reasons we're so keen to hear from you tonight is because we're seeing what God's doing in our young people and young adults as well. So we're defining, if you're not familiar with the terms, we're defining our youth as 11 to 18, secondary school age, and then young adults we're looking at 18, 17-ish up to 25-ish, but not a cut-off at that point. Is that sort of band, is that right?
Spot on.
And we're seeing God do some amazing things in their lives at the moment. So that's why we're so keen to get you in and hear more. Sorry to interrupt, but just the Richard, how's it changed you then? We're hearing that you're a different man.
I
in some way, at least.
I don't know. I wonder whether perhaps I'd always had something in me, but had kind of denied wanting to do whatever that was. And I think when I actually look back, isn't it amazing how God speaks to you sometimes, and he reveals things to you. So I've now worked for 2 Christian charities before. Well, one of them now. So I currently work at an adventure centre in Tunbridge, where we bring kids in to have an amazing time. But most of our team are between the ages of 17 and 23. We worked also for the YMCA, both Karen and I, for a while. And I think probably God was sort of saying, you do realise, Richard, like you have kind of been working around kids for quite a while and youth for quite a while. So I think there was kind of a light bulb moment, if you like, where it was like, yeah, okay, I probably need to acknowledge that. And yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether I could put my finger on anything. I don't know, Karen, whether you could pinpoint what it is, but
I think it's just the setting of those, both the charities, certainly the one that you're with now in that youth setting, is it's not actually working directly with the young people that are coming into that centre, but actually they're more in line with our kind of young adults that are now, and mentoring them in a way that they need to be able to live their Christian lives in the world without having all of the worldly baggage that the world wants them to have, but live in a biblical context. And I think that's something that you've been able to do for them in a pastoral way, but also in a teaching way. And I think, certainly that's a gift. And I think the more that you press into that, the more you learn about yourself as well, and how you fit into that. So I think, sometimes it's hard to acknowledge how you've changed yourself. It's only when other people can see the difference that you notice.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, because I never felt, I guess over years, that God not necessarily wanted me, but I didn't acknowledge God as being present for a long time. So I was brought up as a Christian, i.e. going to a Church of England at the times where you go to a Church of England service. I went to a Catholic school, and I kind of decided that actually I wanted to play cricket and I wanted to play golf, and I kind of left anything to do with God. And it was only through COVID that actually Karen did an Alpha course, said to me, do you want to do an Alpha course? And I said, yeah. Not really thinking anything of it, and then things have just gone from there. And I remember when we got baptised, it was there was a moment that it just changed. And it's amazing, and we may talk about this later, but some of our younger adults are being baptised this weekend, and you just kind of, it brings back memories of your own baptism that wasn't that long ago, and it's just like that's a transformational, amazing thing. And I guess I don't play golf anymore. I want to come to church on a Sunday. And I reckon if you spoke to people that knew me 5 years ago, there was no way they would have thought that would have been the case. And I want to spend time with these young people. And I think if it's okay, I think the Bible says a lot about things. And when you read what the scripture says, in Matthew 18, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you never enter the kingdom of heaven. The Bible talks a lot about the importance of children and how we should serve them. Matthew 19, let the little children come to me, do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. It's just like, that's just a real encouragement that we need to be serving our children, our young people, our young adults. These are the future of our church. Not just the Wells Church, but they're the future of the church. And what a privilege.
Yeah, and I don't think until you actually spend time with them, we talk about we're serving them. Actually, what we have got back from them is tenfold what we've given them. So, and I think that's something that sometimes people forget. Actually, spending time with these young people, they are interesting, they are funny, they are exciting, and we all need a little bit of that in our lives. Life's sometimes really difficult, and we go in on a Sunday morning, we're tired after the week, and we think, oh, how are we going to get through this session, Lord? This is really tough. And we come out and we've spent an hour or so with them, and we're like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it on the
Yeah.
way home. Oh, do you remember when they said this and they said this and they said this? And there's genuine excitement around a session that, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours beforehand, we didn't think we had the energy to be able to deliver.
Mhm.
But, you know, we always get the amount of energy that we need, the words that we need, the teaching that we need, everything we need. And, you know, I think we get so much more back from them, just spending time with them. They're just, they're amazing.
It's great hearing you say this, because when you look at some of the ministry areas across church, life generally, it's not just our church, but so many different ones. Youth is typically one of those ones that people feel least equipped for. And it's the one where I don't think it's hardest to get volunteers for necessarily, but it's one where people write themselves off so frequently because of this impression that we've got that you need to be cool, you need to know all the latest terms,
which we do,
which you obviously do.
Yeah.
You need to be up on the latest technology and understand the difference between different types of gadget and all the rest of it. And people just exclude themselves. And actually what you find is that the youth generally, young people generally aren't interested in that.
No.
They don't need another person who's trying to be as cool as they are, because actually they're dealing with that day in and day out through their lives. All this whole pressure of being cool and whatever. They want people to be true and real and have time for them. And I'm not surprised you found it changing you, because when you invest in a group of young people that you have done, they are amazing. And you take them to heart, and your love for them, your care for them, your compassion for them, it has to change you, right? And that's what you've been seeing, this group that at first, I guess, were maybe faces in a church community, maybe you knew some names, but they're more than that now, right? You've taken these young people to your hearts, and that's part of the shaping process.
Yeah, I think, and the thing is, we don't just think about them on a Sunday morning. We will think about them, pray for them throughout the week. And, you know, there'll be genuine times in the week where I think, you know, that person's got an exam or that person's got a trials. I hope it's going okay. You know, I hope they get through it. Or how are they doing? You do become completely invested in their lives, because actually that's kind of what they deserve as well. It's not just I'm going to worry about you for an hour or two on a Sunday. You know, we're invested in you, we're here for you, and that means every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think teenagers can call out. They know when people aren't really invested.
Yeah.
They know. And I think the joy is that when they are seen and they're heard and they're loved and they're accepted, and they know they've got people behind you, you're kind of reaping that has created an authentic place where they know you are for them, that then they are going to bring all of themselves. And I think that is absolutely credit to you guys, that you've stepped in and created this space that has allowed them to know, do you know what, these people are genuine. This isn't just a Sunday morning tick box exercise because we've got to be out of the service. This is we want to do this for you. We are here for you, because we want to show you the way where we can. We want to encourage you where we can, and we want to love on you where we can. And I think it's so beautiful to see. And I think you guys are such a gift to this church. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for stepping in, and you're such an incredible answer to prayer, because we were praying for a long time that people that the Lord would send somebody that would come, that would be passionate, because we
had great people involved in the team, but it needed coordinating, leading, and I think the way we were seeing it was with all the investment we had, people were giving of themselves to it. But when you're on a rota, you bring your best on your week. You're on a rota, and then you may not be on the rota for 3 weeks, and then you're on it again, and you end up, despite the best of intentions and commitment, being like a rota of supply teachers. And
that's a good way of describing it.
You don't build relationship in the way, and you guys have come in and committed yourselves to relationship building, the slow process of being consistent, being available, being real, and being prayerful, and that's made a huge difference.
And can I ask, was it difficult? Because coming in and then needing to get to know a whole group of kids that 9 times out of 10 will sit back and not say an awful lot because they're sussing you out. Was it difficult, or actually did you find that it flowed quite quickly?
And to add into that context, we're in the Badlands of Royal Tunbridge Wells.
Yeah.
So, you've got
Tough.
gang.
It's
No,
tough out
we've got largely quite polite young people.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that add into that mix of what Joida's just described?
I mean, I'll share first. I'll be honest. The first time that I went down, I was absolutely terrified.
Yeah, I bet.
Absolutely terrified. So we knew a few of them from seeing them in church. We went and watched a couple of sessions, I think, with some of the previous leaders, which was amazing to give them an insight. I remember winning who could build the pyramid of straws the highest.
Richard is all about the winning games, whatever it
I'm
takes.
pretty competitive,
for sure.
and that goes through. So
That's good. That's good. That will go down a long way with some of them.
It's a good life. It's a good life skill to aspire to.
To crush the young people in your care.
Absolutely,
Keep them
yeah.
humble.
It's one of my main
Okay.
things.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
But no, it was terrifying because it's a
Why was it terrifying?
because it's a huge responsibility.
Okay.
And I think, well, I see it as a huge responsibility. I think, as we were saying earlier, it's a massive privilege to be able to share the smallest little bit of wisdom that I've learned over my time on earth with them, to ask them a question that you have no idea what they're going to answer.
Yeah.
And I can remember those first couple of sessions were, right, there's 7 of them. I've got to remember 7 names. Now, I'm pretty good at names, and I'm pretty good. I'm also very good with number plates. So I have that kind of memory.
If only they drove.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm pretty good at remembering names.
Yeah.
But that's not an easy thing when you're suddenly in a room where you're thinking, right, how, Lord, give me some words here to engage them. And there's been some sessions over the last year where we've walked out of a session and we're driving home in the car and saying to each other, "Oh my word, they didn't say a word."
No.
Okay.
It feels like we've talked at them for the best part of an hour, and every time we asked a question there was no response.
Yeah.
But then actually someone then has said something, or a parent has then said. So one of our friends that has been on the podcast before, shared with us that actually his son really loves coming to and I think there were moments where we were thinking,
really? Does he really?
Really?
Okay.
Why?
Why? What we doing? But we had a chat with them all yesterday because we're looking at some different things around youth, and we were talking to them yesterday, and they were saying, she was really lovely, and Stuart, don't take this the wrong way, but they want to be downstairs.
Of course they do.
They would like to be downstairs for longer.
Yeah. And every week.
Yeah, of course
they would.
They feel like they're forming a community of each other. Yeah. And we look at this and we're like, really? Like, we don't see some of that. But then we miss the bits where perhaps they're kicking a football after service in the mezz area we've got, or they're running around with the Radiant Kids, and it's actually we miss some of those little bits.
And I think sometimes you take it for granted because they are maybe younger, that they don't need to discuss things at a level that we might be discussing at a deeper level with our young adults. And clearly yesterday they said, no, we want to know more. We want to go deeper. We want to be here longer. We want to be. We feel this is our community that we feel safe in. And that was we didn't expect that. And it was an amazing response.
Great.
And
awesome.
And we will facilitate that.
Yeah.
But it was, sometimes you don't get that feedback on every week. But actually when you do ask the question, you get it.
I think it's interesting when any time, I don't know about you, Stuart, but when you've preached, you can't know whether you've. I mean, this is really done a good job. I'm not there to do a good job. if I'm preaching, it's because I really feel like the Lord is giving me something. But if you're looking out there to get any kind of affirmation, a lot of the time you're a bit like, is anyone there? And that's okay, because you're not doing it for any other reason than the fact the Lord has asked you to do. So we can't always judge by people's facial expression as to actually what's really going on. But it's so beautiful when you've actually asked the question that they're going, this is actually our church.
Yeah.
To come down and be with you guys is our church. And you want that. Yeah. You want your youth to be as captivated as us. Like Richard, you were saying, golf, cricket, what's that? I want to be in my church. I want to be with my church family. And that's exactly what you guys are creating for these guys, that they want to be together and creating their church community downstairs. And I love that. Yeah. That's so beautiful. And I love the fact that you asked the questions and you got a blessing.
Yeah. And it's genuine. We're like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you. Really, because we're just pleased that
You're not taking it for granted, are you?
No, absolutely not.
And we asked the question, we said to them yesterday, like, just be honest with us. Like if you don't like what we're doing, please tell us. Like, we won't be upset. We won't be offended. We'll go and cry when we get home. Yeah, absolutely. but
keep it in.
But we said to them, like, this is your group. We are here for you. Yeah. We'll do whatever it is you want us to do. And kind of the only thing really they said was, there's not enough pizza and not enough Nando's. And it's
can we have some
on
more
a Sunday
sweets?
Morning at like 10:30. It's not a doable thing.
That doesn't surprise me.
But that's not a bad thing, And actually, when they're saying that, actually they want to go a bit deeper into the Bible, they want to know more about what Jesus or who Jesus is. That's a pretty cool thing to be given that opportunity for, really. So
that's really good, and that shows that despite the weeks when you went home and thought you'd crashed and burned, because you got no response, actually there has been engagement, and the game analogy is an unhelpful one, but you're playing a long game in the sense that you're investing in lives for the long term. This is not a 1 month program or a 6 month program. This is about long-term investment in young people's lives. And just to pick up on a phrase you used earlier, Richard, and I don't mean to come with a different view, but I think you'll agree. I'll try this one. You said that the young people of the church of tomorrow. I want to push back a little bit, because I think they're the church of today with us, and I understand exactly what you mean, is that currently they're not given the kind of senior leadership roles that you would expect, to say that's the church. They're not trustees, they're not, because they're not old enough to be a trustee, a lot of the youth themselves, but they are the church of today, and actually there'll be some things we will plan for them and ask them to do and ask them to be engaged in that they've never done yet, and they'll be terrified by doing it. Yep. But I think what God's doing is so exciting that there'll be some weeks, I'd love to see them much more engaged in our Sunday services on the weeks they are in, and finding all sorts of, because at the moment that we've got a system where they're a little bit passive on those weeks if they're not on a team somewhere, and we've got to change that somehow. Because there's so much potential, for the long term, but gifting now that we want to see engaged. So we're committed. We're having conversations about this to see how do we include them more, and what can we do. But I'm intrigued to hear and see where it'll go with them being so inspired about being longer in youth and there more often. That's great.
And actually, I completely agree with that. And I think what we're starting to see also in and amongst the young people that are there on a Sunday is actually there are some people that they've got some real special gifts and they don't know they've got them. And we've got some leaders in there. We've got some people that are going to really step up. They're going to do some amazing things, and they're going to go on and do more than we could ever think that we could do, more than anyone could ever think they can do, because they'll have Jesus with them doing that. And that's a really exciting thing. So I agree. It's now, and what a thing to see, really.
It's exciting what God will do through them. Thrilling. What are you seeing God do at the moment? When I say at the moment, I don't mean today, but over this recent period, what have you seen God do?
I think the probably the biggest thing that we've seen grow really quickly and much quicker than we certainly anticipated is our young adults. So they're our, what are they, around 17, 18 to 25-year-olds. And we started not that long ago, beginning of the year maybe.
Yep.
Meeting with them once a month, on a Monday, first Monday a month, in the evening. Involves pizza or food, obviously, because they can't live without that. And just a really kind of informal setup where they can discuss whatever they want to discuss. They choose the topic, how they are applying everyday life issues and values to biblical context. So how they can live their Christian lives in a world that isn't entirely Christian. And we've been doing that for a few months, and I think we'd always anticipated that it would be nice that these guys maybe took over the group on their own and you know, expanded the group, and the group has grown from, you know, a handful of people. We've got new people coming in, but then a month or so ago these guys started their own, now we call it group life, not life group, for legal reasons. We know, but so group life started when
is that just to protect them from the pressure of running an organised
absolutely
group?
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah. We say don't say life group.
We take all the expectations off them.
But the crazy thing is, there's like 15 of them meeting every week, and it's like amazing.
And they are literally meeting every week.
Wow.
And because they're running it themselves, they meet different days of the week to suit their diaries. So
it's great, isn't
it just works really well. And they kind of all came together because they all started to help out at the Alpha that we were running, and decided to take things in a different direction for themselves. So we kind of guessed that this would happen at some point, but not this quickly. So, you know, God is moving them on very quickly. And the level of discussion that they're having, they are really taking their time analysing what they're going through, reading the scripture, looking at study notes, looking at other what other theologians have said, applying it. Then they bring it to us and we then discuss it and think, Lord, please give us some answers, because we don't know.
Because they're meaty issues they'll be talking about.
They really are.
They're robust in conversation. This is not just a polite conversation.
Yeah, and you can't just give them an answer that will pacify them.
Yeah,
They're like, no, that does not work.
Good.
Like, okay.
And as an example, you know, we, as Karen says, it generally involves some kind of food. So we went to the Cream's ice cream parlour.
Okay.
We always say to them, it's your night, you come up with a topic. So hit us with Revelation to discuss Revelation.
Great, in Creams.
In Creams.
Awesome. So we're having a fairly heated conversation around
about
what does it mean and all those kind of things whilst eating ice cream with anyone else that's listening to us. And you know, actually you're talking about like sort of evangelism and that kind of thing. You know, they're not afraid to be talking about these topics in public. And
you do have to be careful what you say to them, because we're saying, okay, we're talking about evangelism, and you know, if we said to you, let's go out on the streets now and talk to people, and they're like, yeah, okay, then come on, and we're like, oh well, I think it's a bit dark and it's a bit cold. No, is that rain I can see out there? I don't think so.
And we've had that on a Sunday morning as well.
Their fear level is very different. It's like,
that's great,
no,
isn't
why
it?
not?
Yeah.
And
why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
And even with our younger youth that we meet with on a Sunday, you know, we've they don't have the same. I don't know whether it's the same filter or the same boundaries. I think as you go through life, you build up these barriers, don't you? And it's almost like, oh, look, I can't do that because I've got the wrong shoes for that, so I probably can't go and do that or whatever. Whereas these guys, like, you ask them a question, they've got none of that baggage, none of that burden that we've kind of built up over the years, and they just want to do it. Yeah. So we'd said, oh, you know, we could go out onto the streets one morning and we can go and talk to people in Tunbridge Wells. Yep, that sounds good. Yep, we could set up a car wash. We could do that, and we could get people there. And then once we're washing their cars, you know, we could talk to them, and we could sort of tell them what Jesus or who Jesus is and what he's doing in their lives. And it's like, yeah, we probably need to speak to Stuart about a risk assessment for that one. So
I think Stuart will say no. Yeah.
Really?
Stop it.
But it is amazing. God is moving in this group, and you know, you just look at the the wider Tunbridge Wells sort of what's going on at Bennett. There are 110 people.
This is one of our local secondary schools.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
big secondary school, isn't it? But
yeah, big secondary school. One of the I think he's the head boy. Kind of had this vision that he needed to be talking about Jesus. Decided to run an alpha. They had 110 people doing an alpha, and it's just come to an end. And they're now thinking, right, we've got potentially 110 people looking for a church to go to.
Yeah.
So God is moving in our young people.
Yeah.
And yes, we're seeing it in our younger adults, and we started calling them the older youth to start with, but actually it's just not right. They are young adults. Yeah. So that's what they are now. They've got some interesting working titles for names that they're looking at, which I won't go into, but we're going to go young adults for now. But it's also our younger people. They want to explore these things. They want to talk about topics that are in their lives. And I think, going back to something that was said earlier, it's very easy to think just because we're older we can't add value to that, because we're not at school now, so we don't know what's going on. But actually, a lot of the things they're going through are the things that we went through when we were at school. They're just different. So phones are more of a pressure nowadays, but bullying is still a thing. It was always a thing.
It's just done in a very different way now, isn't it?
So a lot of these things we still are relevant, and I think if you've got a mindset that is right, if you want to, Joida, I think you said, if you want to just love over them, they will respond to that. And that's all you need, is your heart to be changed. You just want to serve them. Age is an irrelevance in that regard. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we were worried about, is are we relevant? Can we relate to these people? And as I say, I'm just a child, so I can. But actually, it was a real worry when we were exploring that. But the fact they seem to value that, they seem to tell us that we're doing something for them. It's exciting to see where they're going to go.
Absolutely.
So
there's one Bible verse I love, which talks about one generation commending God's works to another, and this intergenerational praising the Lord and encouraging one another. I think it's so important. So your input into them and their input into you, and across the church, that matters. Many of us will have had, people listening to this will have had different experiences of church as a young person. I had a few years when I was in a vibrant youth group as part of a church down in the West Country, down in Devon. And I remember being asked, as part of a course that we'd all done, this kind of slightly strange course, I remember being asked to preach my first mini sermon at 16. So we got taken to one of the church plants. There was less than 100 people, but it wasn't a tiny place. And two of us got to do a first mini preach on this Sunday, and we were, took it really seriously. I was nervous about it, and I don't know why they picked me, but I was one of those chosen for that particular Sunday. But it was really affirming and encouraging, and just to see the young people doing that was exciting. A church investing in youth, and I know the adults were blessed. And it won't have been the best sermon they've ever heard by any means, but we want to hear the voices of our young people. We want to know what's going on in their lives, and the fact that they're valuing you is just such a blessing.
I think if we don't hear their voices, we can't champion them on. And I think there's something beautiful within church family, that when you hear someone and you see somebody, we're called to champion each other on this race. So, just as you were saying, Stuart, it was like the Roseblades, Sue and John Roseblade were my youth leaders, and I was only in Portsmouth for about 18 months before I moved away to Guernsey for 3 years. And in that 18 months, those guys were just a gift. They were like the purest of oil. They were just sold out. They had 4 kids that were all at different ages. Adam, their eldest, was I think the year younger than me, but we all hung out together. They just invested And it wasn't that they were just invested because their kids were part of it. They were investing in every single one of us. They were just the most precious little gift to me, that now in my 40s I look back, and they were absolutely fundamental in me just holding on and keep going. And they did that. We had quite a big group, and a lot of us are still in contact all these years later.
Nice. Yeah.
And we're all going for God. We're all living our lives for Jesus. And I don't know if the Roseblades have a clue at what they were doing and what they were planting in. And you go 20 years on, I'm bringing up my children. I know my friends are bringing up their children. And you want to go, actually, what you were doing were not only just feeding into me in my life, but it was the next generation too. And you think it is such an incredible gift to have people that are sowing something that you go, you have no idea what you're doing for the generation that's not even come yet. And it's like, it's so incredible.
I love the fact you've named them.
Oh.
I didn't do that, but I love the fact you have the Roseblades.
Yeah.
And we need to, this is completely off script, but to encourage you guys, because that's precious, the fact that you've named them. I, at risk of indulging my own story a little bit, I went, going back a couple of years before the illustration I gave you, I was just really touched by the fact you were at a church for 18 months. I was at one for 6 months in Exeter. We were my mum and I were travelling in. I think my brother was coming as well. Travelling into this church in Exeter, just looking for a church. We'd recently moved down from London down to Devon, and we went to an Anglican church called St Leonard's. And the curate there was a guy called Graham Tomlin. Now that name may mean nothing to you, it may mean something to you. He's subsequently become Bishop of Westminster. He was the Bishop of Westminster when the Grenfell Tower incident happened, and was quite prominent there. He was quite key in St Mellitus Anglican Training College, and so still involved in lots of areas with the Anglican Church. But he was involved in the youth, and I remember having a conversation one day. I can't remember how the conversation started, but I got invited to go to his house to talk about this sense of a call to ministry that I was trying to explore. And I must have been 14, 15, 40, that kind of age. So I was young. And Graham Tomlin took this seriously. He didn't write me off, but he encouraged me. He booked an appointment for me with somebody called the DDO, the Diocesan Director of Ordinands. And so I had an appointment in Exeter Cathedral Courtyard and went to meet this official older man who inevitably had to say, probably you want to come back when you're a little bit older, which is, but it was the sense of valuing of being taken seriously, not written off, and a serious appointment being made for me to go and explore that meant the world.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So, and that carried with me. I've not kept in touch with Graham. He probably doesn't know who I am, but that input he had in my life was so significant. And to flip on that, the next church in Devon, the Alfords family opened up their home for us. They didn't lead youth, but every week after our Sunday night youth, there'd be 20, 30 of us piling around to their house, having coffees, hanging out, and they opened up their home week after week after week after week. And they weren't, the leaders had a massive impact, but other families were peripheral, but significant. So the impact you guys will be having will be huge on these young people's lives. Not to raise the stakes even more than you knew they were already, but be blessed.
There's something really true about the fact that what's the saying? If you're good enough, you're old enough. So, or it's a saying. I'm terrible stuff like that. But like at a 14-year-old, they must have spotted something in you to have taken it. So you've got to take people seriously, no matter what their age are. And I think that's something that we're really keen. So, I think we try to make a Sunday morning session a bit different to perhaps what a lot of other churches perhaps have always done.
Okay.
So, I think my experience when I was younger, church was...
You mean the smoke machine's a different colour?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But, very much, right, phones get put away at the door.
Okay.
We're going to sit here, we're going to pray for a bit, we're going to read this, and very structured. And we try and do things very differently. So, we kick off with a game that generally gets them moving, probably causes a bit of chaos around.
You might even hear it in the main service.
I have heard it in the prayer room. I went one service to sit and have some time with the Lord. So I was like, I am no good being in the service today, Jesus. I need to come spend time with you, just me and you. And I sat there and I was like, whatever they are doing down there, they are having a ball.
That's
it was
brilliant.
so loud.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
I couldn't hear you guys this last Sunday, but I could hear Radiant Kids at the end.
Yes.
They were
Yeah.
going
Absolutely.
for it. I don't know what was
Why is
happening
it
there.
you
That
always
was
hear your own
amazing.
child? Because I could hear Otto over everyone else thinking, oh my days, trust him.
But initially I thought there'd been some kind of crisis, but no, they were going
They
for
were
it.
having fun.
But it's fascinating. So, we have a room of sort of faces that don't want to say anything, and they sit
Okay.
there.
Yep.
And then you say, right, okay, we're gonna play some kind of game,
Mhm.
and suddenly they come alive, and
So competitive.
they're very competitive. I couldn't possibly comment on that. But suddenly, like, they want to be there. And then that makes the next bit of the session really well. And we try and make it really, really relaxed. So, if we're looking at scripture, if they want to look at it on their phone, that's fine.
Yeah.
If they want to look at it on the Bible, then that's great. But actually, it's not about. It's their group.
Yeah.
Whatever they want to do.
And we mix it up. We've done a bit of audio Bible in the past. We've done video, because not everybody accesses information in the same way.
Yeah.
Reading for some is not going to work. They
Yeah,
need something
absolutely.
visual. So, you have to. You don't just cater for the one person that's like you, that fits the mould, that can read a
Mhm.
Bible and absorb it. That's Richard. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of accommodate everything. And if the room is quiet
Mhm.
and there's a lull, we'll move,
Okay.
because it then
Yep.
just gets moving again, and then we're back in the space. So it is just, it's not school.
No.
I think
No,
that's
please.
the thing. It's
They've
not
done that
school.
all week.
They've done
Yeah.
it all week. Yeah.
Absolutely.
They
And I
don't
think-
want a teacher. They
No.
want somebody to just spend
And we
time
also
with them.
we
Mhm.
also forget, as Karen said, like we can be tired on a Sunday morning. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
all tired, Stuart. Joeda, you prep for a preach on a Sunday morning, and you wake up and you're tired because you've done all the prep for it. Sometimes
I think the only thing that's different is you've got the adrenaline
You
that's
do.
there, and the
Absolutely.
sense of weight that's there.
Yeah.
So that you don't notice the tiredness until later on.
Till about
But
3:00 Sunday afternoon.
when you're dead to the world.
Dribbling in the
And then you think,
armchair.
I've got another meeting to go to.
Yeah.
Oh, quick, come on. Pull yourself together.
But what we have to remember, actually, these young people, they're tired.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
School's been hard in the
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit earlier. There's so much pressure around exams. Like, we pray out for just comfort for
Mhm.
any young person, anyone that's listening to this that's going through exams. It just seems to be incessant.
Yeah.
And it's something that we really feel. Like, we feel their anxiety around
Mm.
this. It's tough. They're tired on a Sunday. So actually getting them moving just breaks some of that
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
pattern, and we don't want to go too deep for them, because we know they've had a tough week, and we want to find that balance between them learning something,
Yeah.
and we hope and pray that they've walked away on a Sunday and they've said something to their parents at some point in that week that hopefully is acceptable, and hopefully we've said the right thing, and we've not shared the wrong stuff, which of course we haven't. But if just one little thing has gone in, that will grow, and then they'll learn something else of that, or they'll come and speak to someone else, or they'll ask a question down the line, or whatever. And I think that's success for us, is if they pick up that Bible in that week to look at something we've talked about on a Sunday morning, bingo.
Yeah.
Or they pray.
Yeah.
Just getting them into that place that they're young, that they can pray for themselves. That
Yeah.
in that moment there's that crossover, that it's beautiful that they will know that you guys are praying and interceding for them, and that would encourage them, but actually that they would start their own conversation, that they might be able to just say, God, I need you, done.
Yeah.
And you think, just that. It's almost as if I feel like the youth is that place of building those little blocks, that when they're the young adults, you're getting the joy of what you're getting with the young adults now, that the foundation of what you're doing with the youth right now will be that young adults that want to press in and go, even further than they are right now. And it's like you're building such confidence and building blocks for them at this stage and this age where a lot of them, you know, they're going at that awkward stage where they don't really know themselves and everything's changing and school's mad and life is just really, how do they deal with it all? And they come on a Sunday to have two people that are just rock solid, the same, consistent, saying, we're here for you. What can we pray for you? What can we do? And hey, this is what the word says. Hey, let's pray. You can pray. You know, those things that are lifelines to them, which I think is so beautiful. I have no doubt, knowing and being around you guys, it's contagious. Jesus is contagious through you. So knowing that even if they don't say something to their parents, you're going to have said something that's going to resonate in their mind during that week. And I think it's beautiful.
And life is tough for these young people, isn't it? Just as you're running through that list of pressures, just remembering how hard it is for them and the incessant pressure that they're under, from whether that's coming from school, needing to take them through all sorts of exams and everything else, or the social pressures that they're facing,
or even themselves, the pressure they put on themselves.
Just trying to figure out, who am I?
And a lot of the time that, I think, is almost the key one, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think what we forget is I think we can sometimes make an assumption that, you know, because we live in an affluent society, living in the UK. You know, they have good lives on the whole, and you know, you hear this saying, you know, these kids don't know they're born. They, you know, but actually they do have all of this stuff. But this stuff comes at a cost.
Yeah.
And you know, we talk about mental health a lot. And I think they're just bombarded from every direction with information, and it's not necessarily truth. So the fact that we're able to share truth with them, even if it's only on a Sunday, and we're saying to them, you know, you should be reading this, or you should be accessing this, whatever works for you. But what we're telling you is truth. The other stuff will bombard you, and it's kind of that exciting stuff, the sensationalist stuff that you hear on the news. I just think that their senses are overloaded with information, and it's really hard for them to decipher what's good and what's bad, and what they need and what they don't need, and what they need to question and what they don't need to question. And they're encouraged to question everything about themselves, every aspect of their lives. And, you know, God has created them perfectly. As he wanted them, in his image. They don't need to question who they are. They know who they are because God tells them who they are.
Come on.
And it's just, they will only know this if they are constantly reading his word. And he constantly will affirm who they are. And that's really important for us to encourage them. And the first thing we did was a prayer course with them, and Judith came down and spoke to us about prayer, because we wanted to open that gates of that communication, because if you're speaking to him, you will hear from him. And it's not just speaking to him in those times of crisis or when you want those, you know, miraculous things to happen. This is the everyday detail. Lord, I'm not feeling great today. I don't know how I'm going to get on that bus. I'm really struggling to decide whether I need to do this or this. It's those everyday conversations that they can have with him in the same way that we do. And it's just encouraging them to do that every day, not just when it's a desperate need.
That's so good. And you mentioned people coming down to youth, and we've focused on you two because this is partly your story and partly you're leading the youth and the youth team, but you've got other people who work alongside you on the youth team, and some great people there.
Amazing.
They're involved. How else can we as a church, and maybe people listening to this in their own communities, be involved in supporting you and supporting our young people? What can we do?
I mean, some very sort of easy wins for everyone. Prayer is always valued, and anyone can do that for us. So not just for the Wells Church youth, but actually for the youth in Tunbridge Wells, the youth in the UK, the youth in the world. You know, I think prayer is really felt, and I think we certainly feel it. We know the church is with us. I think and hope our helpers and other leaders help. Guest speakers, we'd love anyone that might want to come and chat to the youth.
We are going to ask Stuart and Joey, don't we?
Yeah, definitely 100%.
Just so it's on the record, Stuart and Joey.
Okay, so you've
asked.
caught us with microphone in hand.
I see. Well,
so.
mine's a yes.
Yeah,
So
love to.
love to.
I think it's lovely that they get to see the wider church and they see different people's stories. So we've had some amazing people come and share testimonies with them, lead a session.
Yeah.
And actually it's just a huge blessing. If anyone wants or has a heart for youth and is interested, we'd love to chat to you. Always looking for people for the team. Got some exciting plans coming up where we could do with some more people for the team.
Okay. And what sort of what roles are needed? So if people are thinking, oh, maybe I could, not really sure, they've heard your story about how you guys got involved and that's inspired them, but they're still not quite sure what roles there are available or needed. What are those?
I mean, specifically on a Sunday morning, it's people that are just happy to help with running a youth session.
Okay.
And what that looks like
so
is
to support a leader.
Yeah, so generally supporting a leader, we generally break out into sort of smaller discussion groups. So it's kind of facilitating a conversation with the younger people.
Okay.
Doesn't involve a lot more. Having a bit of fun with them is kind of the heart. If anyone feels that they have a particular leadership aspect, so actually leading a session. So I think one of our challenges is that we are in youth for most weeks,
right?
And sometimes I think we occasionally feel a little bit disconnected from the church.
Yeah.
So it is a huge privilege being with the youth. But we do wonder whether they would like to see some more people sometimes.
And I also think it's important for anybody that's in any kind of role that you need to have some time when you can just come and be, because it's important. Yeah. We all need to have some time just to be in his presence without giving out, to replenish, come to the well and drink. Yeah. You know, so yeah. Yeah.
And I think, there is, like, we speak from experience, we have no training. We have, you said, do you know what you're doing? I think you'd reference, Joey, that like we have no idea what we're doing, but God does, and He's putting us in that place. And if you listen to some of our conversations during the week, like we don't agree around a lot of stuff because we have different giftings. So we complement each other, but that causes challenges. I'm lastminute.com. Karen is definitely not that, and that causes a lot of challenges. So, so where am I going with this? So, anyone that wants to get involved in trying to have a bit of fun with our younger people, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. And there's an opportunity to have, as well as all the DBS checks and whatever else, to try to have a conversation with you first, and then to come and see.
Just come and sit in
without
a session
pressure.
with us.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think leadership role makes it sound like it's really heavy.
Yeah.
And it's not. We're basically asking you to just run a session. So we generally will have Richard's planned the whole year of topics out already. So there'll be some guidance in that. Okay, so we will guide and support. We have resources that we would share with you. So it's not like we would say, okay, just lead a session and leave you to it. Actually, there's a lot more that goes into that.
Partly because you're so invested in the lives of these young people, you're not going to have anybody down there.
No.
So you're actually
has to be the right person.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to come and live with us for a couple of weeks. We'll see what you like.
See how people cut the grass.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does that mean I can
wash the car, all those kind of things. So.
If they could do the chores, then that's the point.
I like this methodology. Okay, yeah.
I mean, working on this basis, Richard would not be leading the youth.
Yeah, that's probably true. No, but I think it's a massive privilege to be with them.
Yeah,
and I guess Karen and I have got to know them over a year and a bit. Actually, we're really attached to them. So they are a bit like
Yeah,
our
talking
children
about
to a
holding
degree.
things
and
lightly, we do not hold the youth lightly.
You can't,
Yeah.
can you?
Hanging on.
You can't.
Good.
Yeah.
because you get
Yeah.
to know these guys.
You do.
You do.
And they've
I
got-
had a very humbling experience when I left our previous church to come here, because I'd led youth as part of my role. I'd been one of those people who said, "I'm never doing youth. I'm imagining you needed to be super cool and all the rest of it." I ended up leading it for years, and I was broken when I had to tell them. And they handled it so much better than I did. I'm sobbing, going on. We're going, and they went, "Okay, it's fine, whatever."
Yeah, they adapt
But-
to anything.
Of course they do.
They do.
But
yeah.
they
But
get
they're
your
resilient,
heart,
aren't
don't
they?
they?
They do. They really
absolutely
do.
grip your heart.
Or they should do. If
Yeah.
they don't, then you've got
Then
to
move on,
sometimes
do something
query that
else.
it's not the time and place
Well,
for you anymore. So they
We
absolutely should
we'll
grab your heart.
gladly find other things. You can put the chairs out. You can
Yeah.
do something that
Yeah.
doesn't involve
Absolutely.
needing to care for
If
people.
your heart's not there,
Yeah.
But I think that I think there's one thing that you always have to remember, and I think Stuart, you said this to me a while back, or if you didn't, then I've still
I'll claim
attributed
it if
it
it's
to
good.
it. But if it ever becomes about us,
Yes.
it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that was
And
one
it's-
thing I was going to comment on. That
you know-
all through what you've said, it's been a privilege. You've talked about the privilege of serving.
Yeah.
You've talked about coming alongside the young people,
Yeah.
and it isn't about you. It can't be.
No.
Because if it is, we're doing it wrong.
So we are, I think both Karen and I, our heart is to serve
Yeah.
Jesus in whichever way we can.
Yeah.
And if it's on a Sunday morning with our youth, then we will do everything we can
Right.
to connect them to him.
Yeah.
If it ever gets to a point where we're thinking about, I wonder how I'm going to do this morning, and was my performance good, and did I deliver this, and I didn't feel great, and
Yeah.
then it's
Yeah.
gone to the wrong space. And
Yeah.
I think we're really good at reminding ourselves about that. So they're the people. That's who we want. We want people that just want to serve. And actually, I think our church is really good at finding those people.
Yeah, well, Joida mentioned it earlier, but I'd love to add my thanks for you and your team for what you're investing in the lives of our young people. And we are seeing God at work, and that's mirroring what God's doing across the nation with a generation of young people and young adults who are coming to know Jesus in increasing measure. And we're thankful. I'm thankful that God's put you here for such a time as this.
Yeah.
And bless you for all you're doing.
Yeah, thank you on behalf of every parent. If they haven't come and thanked you, you're doing a stellar job for the kingdom. And as parents, we pray that people would come along and take that baton from us to encourage our kids, so it's not just us, because they need another voice that's saying the same things, cheering our kids on. So thank you for doing that for our kids, and thank you that what you're doing now is going to bring a harvest for another generation to come. So thank you. And church, if you are in the Welsh Church or you are listening from another church, please invest in your youth, no matter how big or small that is. Either join the team or just welcome the youth. Say hello, ask them how they're doing. Get involved, because I tell you what, if you're not, you're missing a trick. You're missing something, because they carry something that we need, and we carry something that they need. And the whole point of being part of family is that we should all be being together, sharing, and we need them. And they need us. So if you are at the Wells Church and you are feeling a nudge as you're listening to this, and you've been feeling a nudge for a little while, listen, you're not going to be thrown in the deep end. Go and speak to Karen and Richard, have a conversation, go and sit in a session and see what the Father is saying. You will be safe to be able to sort of test and see rather than being thrown in the deep end. But please go and have a conversation, press in and ask the Lord what it is that he's saying. And I'd ask you to do the same. If you're listening and you're in part of a church community, ask the Lord what he's asking for you and what you should be stepping up and doing for the young adults and for the youth and even the kids work in your church, because church needs people. And I always find it a very sad statistic that actually, is it 20% do 80% of the work in the church?
It's often used, that statistic.
And you want to go, we're all needed desperately. We're all needed, otherwise people get burnt out. and then you're no good for nothing when you're burnt out. So come on, we need each other. So if you're not serving and this is something that's resonated with you, go and have a conversation with someone. Guys, thank you. Oh, Richard, yes.
I was just like, can I just leave with one bit of scripture that I think
Yes.
is so true. So
Please
it's from
do.
Psalm 127, and it's verse 3, and it says, so children, and I'm going to say young people, if I may, are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. And I think when I was looking at this evening, that really spoke as something that actually we should never forget.
Yeah.
They are special people and the kingdom is theirs.
Amen.
Amen to that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to join us at the
Yeah, thank
table.
you.
Thank you for having us.
It has been wonderful. We're going to miss having some extra voices the next time we
Well,
get,
we'll
because it's
see.
been good, isn't it?
We'll see what happens next time, won't
Oh, yeah. Wait, watch this space. Well, thank you so much. And Stuart, until next time, good night.
we? Good night.